All right, here's part 2 of week 8. The next thing he begins to talk about is television. He begins to get really detailed here. And I just want to read a few of these things. Television is one of the greatest life wasters of the modern age. And of course, the internet is running to catch up and may have caught up. A mind fed daily on TV diminishes. Your mind was made to know and love God. Its facility for this great calling is ruined by excessive television. We have become almost incapable of handling any great truth reverently and deeply. David Wells says, consider him less interesting. And this is just kind of a flow into the weightlessness of God and how this works. Because let me tell you something. When your mind begins to be diminished, you begin to think less of things that are more important. Let me just give you an example. When I lived in England, I was a youth pastor over in England for a year out of my life. And there was a time in the middle of that year where I began to be consumed by, I lived with a family, and one of the teens was I lived with them, and he was one of my youth. And I'm telling you, man, we watched every season of Smallville, every season of the OC. I mean, every night we'd come home. I remember eating the same thing, sitting on the same couch, watching, and it was addicting, and I couldn't stop. I'd be up till 4 in the morning, and there was a time period in my life where it was like that. And I remember that when I began to teach the students, I couldn't focus. I couldn't focus on reading and putting a lesson together. I couldn't focus on teaching while I was up there. And none of it, because what was happening is my mind was becoming so consumed by falsehoods, and it was diminishing right before my eyes, because I was filling it so much with less important things rather than educational and more important things. So David Wells says this, it is one of the defining marks of our time that God is now weightless. I do not mean by this that his ethereal now, but rather that he has become unimportant. He rests upon the world so consequentially as not to be noticeable. He has lost his saliency for human life. Those who assure the pollsters of their belief in God's existence may nonetheless consider him less interesting than television. His commands less authoritative than the appetites for affluence and influence. His judgment no more awe-inspiring than the evening news, and his truth less compelling than the advisor's sweet fog of flattery and lies. That is weightlessness. It is a condition we have assigned him after having nudged him out to the world of a secularized life. Weightlessness tells us nothing about God, but everything about ourselves, about our condition, about our psychological disposition to exclude God from our reality. And what it does is, it doesn't matter if you believe in God or not, but it begins to make God less important, less reverent, less fearful, and you begin to kind of consider yourself on the same playing field as God, and it becomes a very dangerous thing. And here's the thing, I love this part because he then says, the triumph over the televised image over the word contributes to the depthlessness of postmodern sensibilities. The idea that you cannot look at television the same way you can a C.S. Lewis writing or a T.S. Eliot poem or William Shakespeare, because no one on television could utter such lines and such poetry and such writing. It would be bad television, too abstract, too poetic, too deep, just not entertaining. Not only that, but the images appear and disappear and reappear without a proper rational context, and attempting at a sobering news story about slavery in Sudan is followed by a lively advertisement for Disneyland, followed by an appeal to purchase pantyhose that will make any woman irresistible. It's this thought that there's no importance, there's no value in letting your mind diminish by something so worldly and something so disgusting and disgraceful. Internet can very easily be followed up by that. The greatest cause in the world is joyfully rescuing people from hell. You begin to lose sight of that greater purpose. Because television mocks them or makes fun of them or diminishes the problem, the issue, the circumstances. When Disneyland follows up about sex trafficking in the Middle East, it's really hard to focus your mind around sex trafficking long enough to be convicted, long enough to even see the real issue, because Disneyland then pops up and your worldly appetite begins to consume again, and then pantyhose on women, and then some sort of strip club in Dallas, and then the Mavericks game comes back on and the Maverick dancers are dancing, and you've done lost four commercials and 4 things ago what the true issue is, and that's those suffering girls and women in the Middle East. Man, I pray that your mind is not being diminished by TV, and if it is, I pray that you flee from that temptation. Set a schedule, give yourself time limits, look to read just as much as you do watch TV. Lastly, he begins to talk about clothes. It's really the same mindset, guys. It's in the middle of that, I think it's important. I mean, he begins to talk about inspiring sacrifices, and it is. And it talks about the young man who dived on top of the 2. He was too young, found his way over, and then dived on top of 2 bombs and still survived, but he wanted to live for something greater. He wanted to be on the front line fighting for his nation. The idea is that he had urge, and he was a teenager. And teenagers today, that's where he goes into. They're more worried about the music they listen to and the clothes that they wear. What a tragedy to see so many young people obsessed with what they wear and how they look. The no question is, what's wrong with it? The yes question, will these clothes help me magnify Christ? Once again, how will they help me? Not what's wrong with it. Will they highlight my personhood created in the image of God to serve, or will they highlight my sexuality or my laziness? Do you look so much about what you wear that it consumes you and what you look like? About what you watch, about what you listen to? Where are your sacrificial life choices? I love this story, and I just want to reiterate it and then close. It's a story about a Marine. He'd fast-talked his way into Marines at 14, fooling the recruits with his muzzled physique. 14 years old. Assigned to drive a truck in Hawaii, he had grown frustrated. He wanted to fight. He stowed away on a transport out of Honolulu, surviving on food passed along to him by sympathetic leathernecks on board. He landed on D-Day at Iwo Jima without a rifle. He grabbed one lying on the beach and fought his way inland. Now on day one, Jack and 3 comrades were crawling through a trench when 8 Japanese sprang in front of them. Jack shot one of them through the head, then his rifle jammed. As he struggled with it, a grenade landed at his feet. He yelled a warning to the others and rammed the grenade into the soft ash. Immediately, another rolled in. Jack Lucas, 17 at the time then, fell on both grenades. "Luke, you're going to die," he remembered thinking. Aboard the hospital ship Samaritan, the doctors could scarcely believe it. Maybe he was too damned young and too damned tough to die, one said. He endured a 21 reconstructive operation and became the nation's youngest Medal of Honor winner and the only high school freshman to receive it. I love his prayer. Oh God, who will get in their face? Who will get in high school kids' face and give them something to live for? They wasted their days in a trance of insignificance, trying to look cool or talk cool or walk cool. They don't have a clue what cool is. And cool is just too cheap of a word anyways. Because it has no significance even in its wording and its definition. My question is what does your life look like? What are you sacrificing? What choices in your life are a sacrifice? Do you look just like everyone else? Do you watch what everyone else watches? Do you involve yourself in the same activities and hobbies just because everyone else does? And here even talked about is sports your God. Look how much we put on sports. I mean, I think my conversations daily is more about the NBA, MLB, NFL, and any other sport I can think of going on in the Olympics right now. I do not want to be a basketball program that focuses so much around the game of basketball that we lose our greater purpose. The idea is that we use our greater purpose and utilize basketball as a tool in doing so, that we are brothers in Christ. We're able to come together and enjoy God together through the game of basketball, looking to inspire and perspire truth into others on other teams, refs, fans, and tournaments, looking to succeed only because we look at success as a way to glorify God. And I am pleading to you to take a look at your life. I asked you the question earlier, what's the one thing? It might be clothes, it might be television, it might be music, it might be your gun, it might be your car, it might be your house that your parents have so worked hard for, and you get to show that off. What is it? But the other part of this that I want you to just think about is your life measuring up to your greater purpose? Because it's one thing to say, I want to boast in the cross to glorify God, but if your life doesn't line up to that, if your life choices look more like the world than they do like your purpose, then you can say that all day, but it's not going to matter. What does your life look like? The smallest details of your life are important to an all-consuming God. Do not forget that. And lastly, I want to challenge you with this. Look to regain the reverence and fear in God that was set upon Mount Sinai when the clouds wrapped himself around the mountain and only Moses could go up to see him, because if anyone else touched the mountain, then they would die. That our fear and reverence for an all-consuming, all-powerful, all-creating God might be at the forefront of our lives. And that might bring us to our knees to be convicted by the smallest of life choices. I'll see you next week.